I was halfway through my morning coffee when the shrieking started across the lake, and I knew instantly that my peaceful Saturday at Cedar Lake, Minnesota, had just become a nightmare. That dock is illegal. The voice carried clear across the water, shrill and piercing enough to make my neighbor's dog start howling. I squinted through the morning mist and saw her, a middle-aged woman in pressed khakis and a polo shirt, standing on the shoreline pointing at my dock like it had personally offended her entire bloodline. My name is Marcus Anderson, and I had moved to Pinewood Shores community 6 months ago thinking I had found paradise. The small lakefront development sat on the eastern shore of Cedar Lake, about 40 miles north of Minneapolis. 20 homes, most occupied by retirees and young families, all sharing access to the pristine water through a common area. Or so I thought. I set down my coffee and walked out onto my deck, which extended about 15 feet from my back door before meeting the dock I had just finished building 3 weeks ago. The dock stretched another 20 feet into the water, perfectly level, with composite decking that matched my house's trim. I had spent every weekend in May constructing it, measuring twice, cutting once, making sure everything was up to code. "Excuse me," I called back, my voice still rough from sleep. The woman began marching around the lake's edge, following the shoreline path toward my property. She moved with the determination of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. As she got closer, I could make out her features more clearly. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair with artificial highlights, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, and a clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. I said that dock is illegal. She repeated, now standing at the property line where my lawn met the rocky beach. "I'm Patricia Henderson, president of the Pinewood Shores Homeowners Association, and that structure violates at least 7 different covenants, conditions, and restrictions." I descended the deck stairs slowly, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Patricia, good morning. I submitted all the plans to the HOA 3 months ago. I never heard any objections. Well, you're hearing them now." Patricia's face had turned an impressive shade of red that clashed with her pink polo. "This is common area waterfront. You don't own this lakefront. None of you do. The HOA owns it, which means I control access to it." That statement hung in the air like a bad smell. Behind Patricia, I noticed other neighbors starting to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Tom and Linda Peterson from 2 houses down were standing on their deck, coffee mugs frozen halfway to their mouths. The Chens from next door had opened their kitchen window, clearly listening. "Patricia, I reviewed all the property records before I bought this house. My deed explicitly includes lakefront access and the right to construct a private dock, subject to county permits and HOA approval. I have both." She laughed, and sharp sound that scared a family of ducks into flight. "Your deed might say that, but the master HOA agreement supersedes individual deeds. I've been reviewing all the property documents, and I've discovered that the lakefront was never properly divided among individual lots. It's all common area, which means it belongs to the HOA. Which means it belongs to me." "That's not how HOAs work," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "You're the president, not a dictator. Tell that to the county when they come to tear down your illegal structure," Patricia snapped. She pulled out her phone and began taking pictures of my dock from every angle, moving around like a crime scene investigator. "And while we're on the subject, you've been using the lakefront daily, swimming, kayaking, fishing, all without permission. I could charge you for every single day you've trespassed." My neighbor David Chen, a software engineer who worked from home, finally stepped outside. "Patricia, this is insane. We all use the lake. That's the entire point of living here." Patricia whirled on him with predatory focus. And do you have a dock, David? No, but I use the community dock at that's different. The community dock was approved by the HOA. This monstrosity, she gestured at my perfectly constructed dock, was not approved by me. You weren't president 3 months ago when I submitted the plans, I pointed out. Gary Miller was. He approved them. Gary Miller was a fool who didn't understand his fiduciary responsibility to this community, Patricia said. I've been cleaning up his messes for the past 8 weeks, and this is just the beginning. That dock comes down, or I'll have the county do it for you, and you'll pay the fees. She turned on her heel and marched back toward the community clubhouse, leaving me standing on my beach with at least a dozen neighbors now watching from various vantage points. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Linda Peterson. Emergency meeting tonight at the clubhouse. Word is spreading fast. I spent the rest of the morning doing what I should have done more carefully when I bought the house, reading every single word of the HOA documents. The covenants, conditions, and restrictions ran to 47 pages of dense legal language. The master deed was another 30 pages. The bylaws added 20 more. By noon, I had found the section Patricia was using as her weapon. Article 7, Section 3, Paragraph B. All lakefront access areas shall be maintained as common elements for the use and enjoyment of all homeowners, subject to reasonable regulations established by the Board of Directors. But I also found Article 12, Section 1. Individual lot owners whose property abuts the lakefront shall have the right to construct and maintain private docks, subject to all applicable permits and written approval from the Board of Directors. The documents contradicted themselves. Somewhere in the layers of amendments and revisions over the community's 15-year history, someone had created a legal mess. Gary Miller, the previous HOA president, had apparently interpreted the rules one way. Patricia was interpreting them another. My phone rang. It was Sarah Klein, the HOA vice president and one of the few board members who had always seemed reasonable. Marcus, I just heard what happened this morning, she said without preamble. I want you to know that Patricia didn't bring this to the board. She's acting unilaterally. Can she do that? Technically, no, but she's been difficult since she was elected. She's convinced that her role is to protect the community from itself, and she's become obsessed with the lakefront. Why? Sarah hesitated. Her house is on the back row. She doesn't have water access from her property. She has to walk down to the community area like everyone else in the interior lots. I think she resents that some owners have direct access. That explained a lot. Patricia wasn't concerned about rules or community welfare. She was jealous. What can I do? I asked. Come to the meeting tonight. Bring your documentation. And Marcus, bring proof of property value. Because if Patricia succeeds in taking away lakefront rights from the 10 homes that have them, she's going to tank your property values by at least 30%. The emergency meeting started at 7 o'clock in the community clubhouse, a modest building with a kitchenette, a fireplace, and enough folding chairs for maybe 50 people. By 6:45, every chair was full and people were standing along the walls. I had never seen this level of turnout, not even for the 4th of July barbecue. Patricia sat at the front table with the other 4 board members. Sarah Klein, Treasurer Robert Walsh, Secretary Jennifer Martin, and at-large member Carlos Rodriguez. Patricia had a stack of papers in front of her that looked suspiciously like legal documents. This meeting will come to order, Patricia announced, banging a gavel that I was certain wasn't standard HOA equipment. We're here to discuss the illegal structures that have been built on common area property without proper authorization. There's only one dock, Tom Peterson called out from the 3rd row, Marcus's, And he got approval. Approval that was granted improperly, Patricia shot back. The previous president didn't have authority to approve private structures on common land. I stood up, my folder of documents in hand. I'd like to address the board. Patricia looked like she wanted to refuse, but Sarah leaned over and whispered something to her. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. 3 minutes. I walked to the front and turned to face the crowd. 6 months ago, I bought my house specifically because it had lakefront access. I paid $40,000 more than comparable homes in the area because of that access. Before I made an offer, I reviewed the property records, the HOA documents, and the county regulations. Everything indicated that I had the right to build a dock with proper permits and HOA approval. I spent 2 months getting those approvals. I have the permit from Hennepin County. I have the email approval from Gary Miller on behalf of the HOA. I have receipts for $4,000 in materials and equipment, and I have a dock that meets every building code and regulation. None of which matters, Patricia interrupted, because the lakefront is common area. Then why does my deed specifically describe my property boundary as extending to the lake? I held up a copy of the survey. Why does it explicitly mention lakefront access as part of the property rights? Deeds can be wrong, Patricia said. The master HOA agreement controls. Robert Walsh, the treasurer, cleared his throat. He was a retired accountant in his 60s, known for being meticulous and fair. Patricia, I've been reviewing the documents since Sarah called me this afternoon. The HOA agreement and the individual deeds appear to conflict. This isn't something we can resolve tonight. We need a legal opinion. We don't need to waste money on lawyers, Patricia snapped. The answer is obvious. It's not obvious to me, Carlos Rodriguez said. He was younger, maybe 35, a physical therapist who had moved in 2 years ago. I'm an interior lot owner. I don't have a dock, but I don't think it's fair to suddenly tell 10 families that their property rights have disappeared. Jennifer Martin, the secretary, nodded in agreement. This could open the HOA to lawsuits. If we're wrong and we force people to remove docks they legally built, we could be liable for damages. Patricia's face had progressed from red to nearly purple. This board elected me to lead, to make hard decisions, and I'm making one now. All private docks on common area shoreline must be removed within 30 days. You can't make that decision alone, Sarah said firmly. That requires a board vote. I call for a vote on whether to seek legal counsel before taking any action regarding lakefront structures. Seconded, Robert said immediately. Patricia looked trapped. Fine. All in favor of wasting money on lawyers. Sarah, Robert, Carlos, and Jennifer all raised their hands. Patricia glared at each of them in turn. Motion passes 4-1, Sarah said. Marcus, your dock stays until we get legal guidance. I should have felt relieved, but the look on Patricia's face told me this was far from over. After the meeting, as people filed out, Patricia cornered me by the door. You think you've won? She said quietly, her voice low enough that only I could hear. You have no idea what you've started. That lakefront is mine. Those water rights are mine, and I will do whatever it takes to get what belongs to me. The lakefront doesn't belong to you, I said. It belongs to the community. I am the community, Patricia hissed. Then she pushed past me into the night. Over the next week, strange things started happening. On Monday, I came home from work to find an official-looking notice taped to my front door. It was from the county building inspector's office, stating that there had been a complaint about unpermitted construction on my property, and that an inspection would be conducted within 5 business days. I called the county office Tuesday morning and spent an hour on hold before reaching someone who could help. Yes, they had received a complaint. No, they couldn't tell me who filed it, but my permits were all on file and valid, so the inspection was just a formality. They would send someone out Friday. Wednesday, my kayak disappeared. I had left it secured to the dock with a cable lock, the same way I had every night since May. The lock had been cut cleanly with bolt cutters. I filed a police report, but the officer who took the report was not optimistic about recovery. "Probably kids," he said, making notes. "These lakefront communities get hit sometimes, but I'll be honest, without witnesses or video, we won't find it." Thursday, I received a certified letter from a law firm in downtown Minneapolis. Patricia had retained them to represent her in matters relating to property rights and HOA governance. The letter informed me that I was engaging in ongoing trespass and conversion of community property, and that further legal action would be pursued if I didn't remove my dock immediately. I forwarded the letter to Sarah Klein, who called me within 10 minutes. She hired her own lawyer, Sarah said, sounding exhausted. "With her own money, not HOA funds, so the board can't stop her. Marcus, this woman is unhinged. What can she actually do? File a civil suit against you personally. Try to get an injunction, make your life miserable." Sarah paused. "There's something else you should know. Patricia tried to call an emergency board meeting without telling me. She wanted to vote on fining you $500 a day for the dock. Can she do that? No, she needs a quorum and she couldn't get one without me, but she tried. And she's been going door to door to the other interior lot owners, trying to get them to sign a petition demanding removal of all private docks. Is it working? She has about 8 signatures out of the 10 interior lots. Most people don't want conflict. They're scared of her." Friday afternoon, the county inspector arrived. His name was Mike Harrison, a jovial man in his 50s who had probably seen every kind of deck and dock imaginable. He spent 20 minutes examining my work, checking measurements, reviewing my permits, and taking photos. "Who filed the complaint?" I asked as he was finishing up. "Can't say officially," Mike replied, "but I can tell you that this is solid work. Meets code, permitted properly, built right. Whoever complained was hoping I'd find violations that aren't there." He handed me a signed inspection certificate. "You're good. Keep this somewhere safe." That evening, I was grilling dinner on my deck when I noticed Patricia standing on the community beach area, about 100 feet down the shoreline. She had a camera with a long lens and was photographing my property. Not just the dock, everything. My deck, my windows, my yard. I waved at her. She lowered the camera and walked away. The HOA's attorney sent her opinion 2 weeks later. I knew because Sarah called me the moment she received it. "It's complicated," Sarah said. "The lawyer says the documents are ambiguous." She says that homeowners with lakefront lots probably do have riparian rights, meaning they can build docks, but that the HOA also has some authority to regulate use of the common areas. She recommends we update the master deed and bylaws to clarify, which would require a vote of all homeowners. What does Patricia say? She says the lawyer is wrong and that she's getting a second opinion. The second opinion came from a firm that specialized in property disputes. This lawyer sided more strongly with Patricia's interpretation, arguing that the HOA's common area designation trumped individual riparian rights. Now, we had dueling legal opinions and no clear path forward. At the July board meeting, Patricia proposed what she called a compromise. All existing private docks could remain, but their owners would have to pay an annual fee of $5,000 to the HOA for the privilege of using common area waterfront. The room erupted. Tom Peterson stood up so fast his chair fell backward. $5,000. That's extortion. "That's the market rate for exclusive use of premium lakefront," Patricia replied calmly. "I've done the research. Marina slips in this area rent for $4,000 to $6,000 per season. We're not renting slips, David Chen shouted. We're using property we own. Property you think you own, Patricia corrected. The fee structure is fair. If you don't want to pay it, remove your docks. I had been doing my own research in the weeks since this started. I raised my hand. Patricia, I've been looking into the history of Pinewood Shores. When this development was created 15 years ago, the original developer specifically marketed the lakefront lots as having private water access. The sales materials promised dock rights. People paid premium prices based on those promises. If you take those rights away now, you're not just violating property law, you might be engaging in fraud. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of the legal reality. If you force this issue, you won't just face lawsuits from current owners. The title insurance companies will get involved. The original buyers who sold their homes to current owners might have claims. This could blow up into something much bigger than an HOA dispute. Robert Walsh nodded slowly. Marcus is right. This has liability written all over it. Patricia, I move that we table this discussion until we can get a definitive legal ruling, either from a judge or from a mediator all parties can agree on. Seconded, Sarah said immediately. The motion passed 4-1 again, with only Patricia opposed. I thought maybe reason had prevailed, that cooler heads had won out. But as we filed out of the clubhouse after the meeting, Patricia blocked my path. You've made this personal, she said softly. You've turned the board against me. You've made me look foolish in front of the community. That was a mistake. This was always personal for you, I replied. You're angry that you don't have lake access from your property, but that's not my fault. That's not anyone's fault. You bought an interior lot. I bought into a community with rules, Patricia said. And I intend to enforce those rules, no matter what it takes. The next escalation came from a direction I didn't expect. On a Tuesday morning in early August, I left for work and found that someone had dumped a load of gravel across the path from my yard to the beach. Not just a little bit, at least 2 cubic yards, creating a barrier about 3 feet high and 6 feet wide that completely blocked access to my dock. I called the police. The responding officer, a young woman named Officer Delgado, examined the gravel pile and took notes. Do you know who did this? She asked. I have suspicions, but no proof. Any security cameras? Not yet. I'm installing them this week. Officer Delgado walked the property line, examining the gravel. This is technically on the common area, right at the edge of your lot. That complicates things. If it were clearly on your property, it would be trespassing or vandalism. But if it's on HOA property, they might argue they have the right to place obstacles. Even if it prevents me from accessing my own dock. That's a civil matter, not criminal. You'd need to take it up with the HOA. I spent 3 hours that afternoon with a shovel, moving the gravel off to the side. By the time I finished, I was sunburned, dehydrated, and furious. I took photos of everything and sent them to Sarah Klein. Her response was immediate. Emergency board meeting tonight. This has gone too far. The meeting was tense from the start. Patricia showed up with her personal attorney, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s named Douglas Kramer. His presence immediately put everyone on edge. My client has done nothing wrong, Kramer said before anyone else could speak. The gravel was placed on HOA property as part of a landscaping evaluation. If it inadvertently blocked access to an unauthorized structure, that's not Mrs. Henderson's concern. Unauthorized, I nearly shouted. I have permits. I have approval. Approval that my client contends was granted improperly, Kramer replied smoothly. Until that dispute is resolved, the HOA has every right to manage its common areas as it sees fit. Sarah looked ready to explode. Douglas, I'm also on the HOA board. Patricia didn't tell any of us she was planning this. She can't take unilateral action. Mrs. Henderson is the president. She has authority to manage day-to-day operations. Dumping gravel to block a homeowner's access isn't day-to-day operations, Robert Walsh interjected. It's harassment. The meeting devolved into shouting. Carlos Rodriguez threatened to call for a vote to remove Patricia as president. Patricia threatened to sue him personally for defamation. Jennifer Martin started crying and left the room. It was chaos. Finally, Douglas Cramer raised his hands for silence. Here's what's going to happen. My client is prepared to offer a settlement. Mr. Anderson removes his dock voluntarily. The HOA waives any fines or fees. Everyone moves on. No, I said flatly. Then we'll see you in court, Cramer replied. Mrs. Henderson is filing a lawsuit tomorrow morning seeking an injunction against your continued use of the lakefront and demanding removal of your dock. She's also filing a complaint with the county attorney's office regarding fraudulent permits. That threat hung in the air. A complaint to the county attorney could trigger a formal investigation, even if it was baseless. It would cost me time, money, and stress to defend against. This is insane, I said. Patricia, what do you actually want? Because this isn't about the dock anymore. This is personal. Patricia stood up, and for the first time since this began, she smiled. What do I want? I want what's fair. I want every homeowner in this community to have equal access to the lake, not special privileges for a few lucky lot owners. So here's my offer, and it's non-negotiable. You and the other lakefront owners agree to remove your private docks. In exchange, the HOA will build a larger community dock that everyone can use. Equal access for everyone. We already have a community dock, David Chen pointed out. A small one. I'm proposing a major dock with slips for 10 boats, space for kayaks and canoes, even a swimming platform. I've had it designed. She pulled out architectural drawings. It would cost about $80,000. We'd pay for it through a special assessment on all homeowners. You want everyone to pay for a new dock so you can force the lakefront owners to give up their private access. Tom Peterson said incredulously. That's your solution. It's fair, Patricia insisted. Everyone pays equally. Everyone benefits equally. Except the people who paid $40,000 extra for lakefront lots, I said. We lose that value and we have to pay for your new dock too. Life isn't always fair, Patricia replied. I walked out. There was no point in continuing the discussion. Patricia had made up her mind and she had the resources to fight dirty. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Sarah Klein. Marcus, I need to tell you something in confidence, she said. Patricia came to my house last week. She offered me $20,000 to vote with her. I nearly drove off the road. She tried to bribe you. She called it compensation for my time and stress. She said if I voted to remove the lakefront rights, she'd personally pay me. She probably approached the other board members too. Did you report this? To who? It's not technically illegal to offer money to fellow volunteers. Unethical, sure, but not criminal. What did you tell her? I told her to leave my house. But Marcus, if she's willing to go that far, I don't know what else she might do. Be careful. I installed security cameras the next day. 4 of them. 2 covering the front of my house, 1 on the back deck pointing at the dock, and 1 covering the path to the beach. They uploaded footage to cloud storage in real time. If anything else happened, I'd have evidence. The cameras paid off sooner than expected. 3 days after installation, at 2 in the morning, motion alerts woke me up. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the live feed. Someone was on my dock with a sledgehammer. I called 911 while pulling on clothes. Someone is vandalizing my property right now. I have them on camera. I ran outside without waiting for the police, probably stupid in hindsight. The person on my dock heard me coming and turned. In the moonlight, I could see it wasn't Patricia. It was a man, maybe in his 20s, wearing dark clothes and a ski mask. He had already smashed through several of the composite deck boards. "Get off my dock," I shouted. He took one more swing with the sledgehammer, then jumped into a small motorboat I hadn't noticed tied to the dock. The engine roared to life, and he sped off across the lake, disappearing into the darkness. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I showed them the camera footage. You could clearly see the vandalism, though the person's face was covered. The boat had no visible registration numbers. "Do you know anyone who would want to damage your property?" Officer Delgado asked. She had responded to my previous call about the kayak and seemed genuinely concerned now. "I'm in a dispute with the HOA president," I explained. "She wants me to remove this dock." "You think she hired someone to destroy it?" "I don't have proof, but the timing is suspicious." Officer Delgado made detailed notes and took a copy of the video footage. "This is criminal damage to property. If we can identify the person or prove who hired them, we can press charges. Keep your cameras running." The damage to the dock was extensive. 4 deck boards completely destroyed, 2 support posts cracked, and the metal brackets holding one section twisted beyond repair. Insurance would cover most of it, but my deductible was $1,000, and I'd have to do the work myself or pay a contractor. I spent the weekend making temporary repairs, just enough to keep the dock safe and usable. On Monday, I received another certified letter. Patricia's lawsuit had been filed. She was suing me personally, and she was suing the HOA as an entity, claiming breach of fiduciary duty for allowing the dock to be built. I needed a lawyer. I called around and found Richard Mallory, a real estate attorney who had experience with HOA disputes. His retainer was $5,000. His hourly rate made my stomach hurt, but I didn't have a choice. Richard reviewed all my documents over the course of a week. When he called me in for a meeting, he looked cautiously optimistic. "You have a strong case," he said. "Your deed, the county permits, the original marketing materials for the development, the email approval from the previous HOA president, all of it supports your right to have the dock. But here's the problem. HOA law is complicated, and judges often defer to HOA boards on internal governance issues. If Patricia can convince a judge that the board as a whole supports her position, you could lose even with good facts on your side. The board doesn't support her. It's 4-1 against her on every vote. Then we need board members willing to testify to that. We need to make it clear that Patricia is acting as a rogue president, not on behalf of the HOA. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 15th. In the meantime, life in Pinewood Shores became increasingly tense. The community split into factions. Lakefront lot owners and their supporters on one side, Patricia and the interior lot owners on the other. Someone started a Facebook group called Pinewood Shores Truth, where anonymous members posted accusations and arguments. Patricia claimed I was a selfish elite hoarding community resources. I was accused of bullying a volunteer who was just trying to do her job. The rhetoric got nasty fast, but Patricia made a critical mistake in late August. She sent an email to all homeowners announcing that the monthly HOA fees would increase by $50 per month to cover legal expenses related to protecting community property rights. That email galvanized opposition. Even people who had been neutral or mildly supportive of Patricia recoiled at having to pay for her personal vendetta. Within 2 days, a petition circulated calling for a special meeting to remove Patricia as president. It gathered signatures from 30 of the 42 homeowners. The special meeting was scheduled for September 3rd. I attended but tried to stay in the background. This needed to be about Patricia's conduct, not about me. Robert Walsh, the treasurer, presented a financial report showing that Patricia had spent over $15,000 in HOA funds on her personal attorney without board approval. She had also committed the HOA to paying for the new community dock design without a vote. She had exceeded her authority in at least 8 different ways. Patricia defended herself with characteristic aggression. I've been protecting this community from people who think they are special, from people who think rules don't apply to them. If you remove me, you're choosing chaos over order. You're choosing your ego over the community, Carlos Rodriguez shot back. This was never about protecting anyone. This was about you being angry that you don't have lake access. That's a lie, Patricia's voice cracked. I bought here because I believed in community, in equality. And watching people flaunt their privileges while others go without, it's not right. Sarah Klein stood up. Patricia, I've tried to work with you, we all have, but you've made it impossible. You've divided this community. You've wasted our money. You've harassed our neighbors. It's time for you to step down. The vote wasn't even close. 37 homeowners voted to remove Patricia as president. 3 voted against, including Patricia herself. 2 abstained. Sarah Klein was elected interim president by acclamation. Her first act was to authorize spending HOA funds to defend against Patricia's lawsuit, on the grounds that the suit harmed the entire community. Her second act was to formally approve my dock on behalf of the board, with proper documentation and unanimous board support. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Patricia didn't withdraw her personal lawsuit. If anything, she doubled down. Her attorney filed additional motions, demanding extensive discovery, depositions, and expert witnesses. The legal fees mounted. My attorney estimated that going to trial would cost me $30,000, even if I won. Richard Mallory advised me to consider a settlement. Sometimes winning in court means losing financially. She knows you can't afford to fight indefinitely. I'm not giving up my dock, I said stubbornly. I'm not saying you should, but maybe there's a middle ground, an acknowledgement of her concerns, some kind of symbolic gesture. I refused to consider it. This had become about principle. Patricia had tried to bully me, vandalize my property, and destroy my investment. I wasn't going to reward that behavior. The preliminary hearing arrived on September 15th. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, just a simple room with benches, a judge's desk, and the Minnesota state flag in the corner. Judge Margaret Thornton presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Patricia's attorney, Douglas Kramer, presented his case first. He argued that the HOA documents clearly designated the lakefront as common area, that individual homeowners had no right to exclusive use, and that my dock represented an illegal encroachment. He presented the conflicting legal opinions as evidence that the issue was unsettled. My attorney countered with the deed, the permits, the original marketing materials, and testimony from Gary Miller, the previous HOA president, who confirmed that he had approved multiple docks over his 3-year tenure without any controversy. Judge Thornton asked pointed questions. Mr. Kramer, if the lakefront is purely common area with no individual rights, why do the deeds for lakefront lots explicitly mention water access? The deeds are in error, Your Honor. They conflict with the master HOA agreement. And when 2 legal documents conflict, which takes precedence? The HOA agreement, as it governs the entire community. That's not always true in property law, counselor. Individual deed rights can supersede community agreements, particularly when those rights were part of the original purchase consideration. Kramer pressed on, but I could tell the judge was skeptical. After 90 minutes of arguments, she called for a recess. During the break, Richard pulled me aside. "She's leaning our way, I can tell. But she might still rule that it's an internal HOA matter that needs to be resolved by the board, not the courts. The board already resolved it. They approved my dock. The new board did. But Patricia is arguing that approval was retaliatory and invalid." When we reconvened, Judge Thornton delivered her ruling. "This is a complex property dispute that involves interpretation of multiple documents. However, I'm not convinced that Miss Henderson has standing to bring this suit as an individual. She's not the HOA. She's merely a former officer of the HOA. The current board has approved Mr. Anderson's dock. Unless the board as an entity sues, or unless Miss Henderson can demonstrate personal harm, she doesn't have grounds to proceed." Kramer jumped up. "Your Honor, my client owns property in the community. The unauthorized dock harms her property value and enjoyment." "How, specifically?" Judge Thornton asked. "By reducing available common area for her use. But she still has access to the community dock and beach areas, correct?" "Yes. But then I'm not seeing the personal harm. Motion to dismiss granted. Miss Henderson, if you wish to pursue this matter, you need to do so through proper HOA channels, not individual litigation." It was a huge victory, but not total. Patricia could still cause trouble through the HOA if she could convince other homeowners to support her. And the legal fees had still cost me $12,000, even with the dismissal. But as we left the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. My dock was safe. My property rights were validated. Patricia had lost, or so I thought. 2 weeks after the court ruling, Officer Delgado called me. "Mr. Anderson, we've made an arrest in the vandalism case. I thought you'd want to know." "You found the guy who destroyed my dock." "We did. And you're going to want to hear this. His name is Tyler Henderson. He's Patricia Henderson's son." The investigation had taken time, but it was thorough. Tyler Henderson, age 24, had been identified through the motorboat he used. It belonged to a friend, and that friend eventually talked when police questioned him about suspicious late-night activities. Tyler confessed to the vandalism. More importantly, he confessed that his mother had paid him $500 to do it. She hired her own son to commit a crime. I asked, incredulous. "Apparently so. We're bringing charges against both of them. Tyler for criminal damage to property and Patricia for conspiracy to commit criminal damage. That's a felony." The news spread through Pinewood Shores like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew that Patricia had orchestrated the dock vandalism. The Facebook group exploded with comments. People who had supported her felt betrayed. People who had suspected her felt vindicated. Patricia's attorney issued a statement denying everything, claiming Tyler had acted alone out of misplaced loyalty to his mother. But the evidence was clear. Text messages between Patricia and Tyler showed her planning the vandalism, discussing payment, and promising to handle the legal consequences if he got caught. The criminal charges proceeded quickly. Tyler, facing felony charges at such a young age, accepted a plea deal. 2 years probation, restitution to me for the dock damage, and 200 hours of community service. In exchange, he testified against his mother. Patricia's trial was scheduled for November. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea, but the county attorney's office was not sympathetic. Patricia had been a lawyer herself years ago before retiring. She knew the law, and she had deliberately broken it. The trial lasted 3 days. Tyler's testimony was damning. He described how his mother had become obsessed with the dock situation, how she had ranted about it for weeks, how she had finally offered him money to send a message to the entitled Lakefront people. Text messages showed Patricia's state of mind. In one, she wrote to a friend, "These people think they're better than me because they have direct lake access. I'll show them they can't just do whatever they want." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit criminal damage, solicitation of a crime, and filing a false police report when she had initially claimed to know nothing about the vandalism. Sentencing came in December. Judge Thornton, the same judge who had dismissed Patricia's civil suit, did not show mercy. "Miss Henderson, you held a position of trust in your community. You were elected to lead, to serve, to resolve disputes fairly. Instead, you used your position to wage a personal vendetta. You hired your own son to commit a crime. You lied to police. You abused the legal system with frivolous lawsuits. This court takes such conduct seriously." Patricia was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, with the possibility of early release after 9 months for good behavior. She was also ordered to pay restitution to me for legal fees, dock repairs, and the stolen kayak. The total came to $19,000. She was also permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Minnesota, a condition of her probation. As I sat in the courtroom watching Patricia being led away in handcuffs, I felt an odd mixture of vindication and sadness. This woman had destroyed her own life over a dock, over jealousy and perceived unfairness. She had turned a simple property dispute into a criminal case that would follow her forever. The aftermath took months to settle. Patricia's house went on the market in January, sold at a loss in February. She served her 9 months and was released in September of the following year, moving to live with relatives in Iowa. I never saw her again. The HOA, under Sarah Klein's leadership, commissioned a complete rewrite of the governing documents. A real estate attorney worked with the board to create clear, unambiguous language about lakefront rights. Homeowners with direct water access were confirmed to have dock rights, subject only to reasonable design and permit requirements. Interior lot owners were guaranteed access to enhanced community facilities, including a modest expansion of the community dock funded by regular HOA dues, not special assessments. The vote on the new documents was 39 in favor, 0 against, 3 abstentions. The community finally had clarity. My dock stands today, rebuilt and stronger after the vandalism. I've added a bench at the end where I sit on summer evenings, watching the sunset over Cedar Lake. Other lakefront owners have built or improved their docks as well. The community dock got its modest expansion, with space for kayaks and canoes that anyone can use. Tom Peterson invited me over for a beer last month. We sat on his deck, looking out at the water, talking about everything that had happened. "You know what I learned from all this," he said. "HOAs are only as good or bad as the people who run them. We got lazy, let someone with an agenda take control, and it nearly destroyed the neighborhood." "We fixed it, though," I replied. "Did we? Or did we just get lucky that Patricia went too far and got caught?" It was a good question. I thought about it as I walked home that night, past houses where lights glowed warmly, where families were settling in for the evening, where life in Pinewood Shores had returned to peaceful normalcy. The truth was, we had gotten lucky. If Patricia had been slightly smarter, slightly more patient, slightly less willing to cross legal lines, she might have succeeded in taking away property rights that people had paid for. She might have turned our community into a place of permanent resentment and division. But she had overplayed her hand. Her jealousy and rage had driven her to commit actual crimes, and in the end, that was what saved us. I reached my house and walked down to my dock. The wood was solid under my feet, the water lapped gently against the posts, and somewhere across the lake a loon called out in the gathering darkness. This was mine. I had fought for it, paid for it, defended it. Not because I wanted special privileges, but because I wanted to protect what I had legitimately purchased. The "that dock is illegal" signs that Patricia had tried to post around the community were long gone, removed by sheepish neighbors who had briefly supported her campaign. In their place, the community had installed new signage with updated rules, clear and fair, protecting everyone's rights. I sat on the dock bench as night fell completely, stars emerging overhead. Sarah Klein had called me earlier that day to let me know that property values in Pinewood Shores had actually increased over the past year. The resolution of the legal ambiguity, the clear documentation of property rights, and the improved community facilities had made the neighborhood more desirable, not less. The 10 lakefront homes had not lost value. The 32 interior homes had not been harmed. Patricia's zero-sum thinking, her belief that someone else's gain must be her loss, had been wrong from the start. I thought about her sometimes, wondered if she understood that yet. Wondered if she sat in her relative's house in Iowa regretting the choices that had cost her so much. Probably not. People like Patricia rarely admitted they were wrong. They found new targets, new grievances, new wars to fight. But that was her problem now, not mine. A kayak glided past, someone from one of the interior lots using the community equipment. I waved. They waved back. Just neighbors enjoying the lake on a beautiful evening. That was what community was supposed to be. Not conflict and hierarchy, not hoarding and resentment, but shared space and mutual respect. We had almost lost that. But in the end, through legal processes and clear documentation and people willing to stand up for what was right, we had preserved it. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen. "Fire pit at my place Saturday night. Bring whatever you want to drink. Kids welcome." I smiled and typed back my acceptance. Life in Pinewood Shores had moved on. The dock controversy was history, a cautionary tale we would tell new neighbors but no longer lived with daily. As I walked back to my house, I took one last look at the dock silhouetted against the moonlit water. It was just a structure, just wood and metal and composite boards. But it represented something more. The principle that rights matter, that property ownership means something, that communities function best when governed by law rather than the whims of whoever happens to hold power. Patricia had yelled that the dock was illegal. She had been wrong. But more than that, she had been willing to destroy lives and relationships to impose her version of fairness on everyone else. That was the real crime, even beyond the vandalism she had orchestrated. I slept well that night and every night after. My dock remained standing, my property rights secure, my place in the community solid. The lake lapped against the shore, the seasons changed, and life went on in the way it was supposed to, peacefully, legally, and fairly for everyone involved. The lawyers had been paid. The courts had ruled. Justice, slow and expensive as it was, had prevailed. And somewhere in Iowa, Patricia Henderson was living with the consequences of her choices, while the rest of us moved forward without her. That was the end of it. Not dramatic, not explosive, just the quiet restoration of normalcy. Which was, I realized, exactly what we had all wanted from the beginning. Not victory over our neighbors, not dominance or special status, just the right to enjoy the property we had purchased and the community we had chosen. The dock stood. The lake flowed. The community healed. And on summer evenings I sat at the end of my dock with a book or a beer or sometimes just my thoughts, grateful for the small piece of lakefront that was mine, legally and completely, with no one left to question it.